And in our update number 902, we also have the following introductory comment, which I like to read right now to you, and then I will comment on it some more. It has been said that if you have 4 attorneys or law professors in the room, you might get at least 8 legal opinions. This claim did not hold true in the House Judiciary Committee hearing this week, where 4 legal scholars were questioned to determine whether President Trump had committed an impeachable offense. While 3 law professors who had been invited by the Democrats were unanimous in their conclusions that Trump had committed impeachable offenses, and those 3 were Harvard Law Professor Noah Feldman, Stanford Law Professor Pamela Karlan, and University of North Carolina Law Professor Michael Gerhardt. The 4th law professor, Jonathan Turley from the George Washington University, who had been approved by the Republicans, totally disagreed with that assessment and warned Congress instead not to abuse its power in the proceedings. This was remarkable, in that he was not even a Trump supporter, stating from the outset that he had been voting against him. But any fair-minded, politically unbiased person would have concluded that he was the one with the most reasonable conclusions, while the 3 professors on the other side were unconvincing in their biased and politically motivated legal analysis, which at times bordered on the ridiculous. And then we go on to say that we will not comment in this update any further on the impeachment circus, given the fact that President Trump will not lose his office prematurely due to impeachment, and that he will be re-elected in 2020. Now, we have been saying this time and again, in writing, over the internet, and we stand by that. We have said it already at the time that he would be re-elected when he was just entering the office of president. I watched this entire circus on Wednesday, but it wasn't really a circus in the sense that you had clowns who were funny and that you might have had magicians who were interesting in that they showed something you didn't expect. The clowns in this circus weren't funny, and those magicians said exactly what was predictable. The 3 professors who spoke and who were unanimous in their opinions, I felt sorry for the students who had to listen to them. You had this Harvard Law professor, and Harvard Law School is known as one of the most left-liberal institutions, if not the most liberal institution in the United States when it comes to law. And then you had this lady, and she was even too left-wing for President Obama, because he did not nominate her as a candidate for the United States Supreme Court when there was a vacancy, because he felt she was too way outside. And so these were the ones who were giving their unanimous opinion. Some even admitted they hadn't even read the testimony of the witnesses until the night before. And they already knew, of course, because they were invited by the Democrats, they already knew what the outcome would be. It was a sham and a farce. It was a complete hoax. And it was shameful to see that, because it was a political maneuvering. But I tell you one thing, even if we wouldn't know God's truth, even if we wouldn't know that President Trump has a role to fulfill, which he has not quite fulfilled yet, what the Democrats have done right now is completely and totally a guarantee that President Trump is going to be re-elected. Because they are going to lose this whole thing in such a dramatic way that many who might have otherwise perhaps voted for them, talking about the independents, are not going to do it, because they will see what a terrible disaster they have created. Now, I have been saying time and again that I'm not making these statements because I am a political supporter of Donald Trump, or because I am somebody who is politically antagonistic towards him, neither is the case, because I frankly couldn't care less. And neither should you. We're not talking about taking a political position. We are talking about watching carefully what is happening in this country and around the world in the light of biblical prophecy. And we also know, don't we, that the relationship between the United States of America and continental Europe, for instance, will deteriorate to an extent that ultimately there's going to be war between these power blocs. We also know something else, that a third temple is going to be built in Jerusalem, on the Temple Mount. And I am right now in the process, having begun with that process this morning, of creating another series of articles in talking about these issues and also trying to explain how this is going to be coming about when it comes to these specifics. Because I believe some have quite an incomplete picture on that one. How is it going to come about? Through whom is it going to come about? And what are the consequences? And what are they going to be? But I also like to point out, and that is something which we in the Church of God, and I'm not just talking about our membership, I'm talking about everybody who is a member of the Church of God, the spiritual body of Christ. We all need to be aware of that. And that has to do with what is going to happen soon. And I mean very soon. Right now we are dealing with the anniversary of the Holocaust in Germany, of course, and in other countries too, Poland, Hungary, and so on. And Angela Merkel was just interviewed. She went to Auschwitz, and she was again shocked and said, you know, it's terrible to even watch that and see that again. And never again must there be anything like it. Of course, we know it will happen again, and in much greater ways. There's another standing watch program we've done on that issue. There's another Holocaust coming. But this time it will be slightly different. See, last time it was mainly directed against the Jews, other minorities. This time it will be directed mainly against the American people, the British people, Canadian people, maybe Australians, maybe South Africans, maybe New Zealanders. How can I say that? Well, because we know that the United States of Europe, once we have those 10 nations or groups of nations in place, will attack with nuclear weapons the United States of America and Great Britain, and of course also the State of Israel. Most people in the United States of America will die. Only very few will survive. They will be ending up in concentration camps, in slavery. Not in this country. They will be taken away from this country. This country will be so polluted that they couldn't live here anymore. They will be taken into other places over there in continental Europe and the Middle East. You go back to the time of the Holocaust. Nobody who is alive today can be and should be in any way blamed for what happened then. Whether it is the German people, whether it is the American people. I mean, let's not dismiss the fact that the American government knew what was happening in Germany. They were very well aware of the Holocaust. They chose to ignore it. In fact, they chose to not allow the Jews who wanted to escape Germany and who wanted to come over here to come over here. They rejected their coming over here. So they stayed in Germany. So they were killed and murdered in these concentration camps. There was too much of an indifference here in this country. Of course, there was a lot of anti-Semitism in this country too, as we are seeing it again. But what about today? The American people in particular, and I am an American too, they are far too indifferent when it comes to what is happening right now. Far too indifferent to the fact that we have immigration laws in place, or which are going to be in place very soon if the current administration has it their way, which will lead to a repeat in many cases of what has happened in Nazi Germany during World War II. We already know of a concentration camp and a whole detention camp in China, and nobody is doing anything about it. We're knowing about torture and absolute murder in certain countries, and we are here completely and totally indifferent about it, thinking, well, okay, it's not going to affect us. Well, what if it does affect us? What if the American people will be those then who ultimately end up in those concentration camps, those who are surviving these nuclear attacks in terrible, excruciating pain, in such a pain they have never experienced in their life? It says they are going to look for death and they can't find it. Then those who are surviving might come to a realization that they perhaps should have acted in a much more different and much more concerned way than they are doing it today. This is all going to happen. And this is going to happen under the present watch of the leadership. And that's why I'm saying it's going to continue. I'm not just talking about America, and Europe is equally bad, if not worse, when it comes to the whole immigration system. I was just reading this morning about the latest decision. I was wondering, because I don't read much about what happened to this public charge idea. You know, that people cannot even come in anymore if they are becoming those who might be dependent on food stamps or other public support. And again, there was complete silence in the press. So I went on the internet, and lo and behold, 2 days ago, the district or the circuit of the Court of Appeals of the Ninth Circuit, which is probably the most liberal left-wing court in the country, decided that the injunctions which have been placed by lower courts on this new procedure trying to prevent it had to be lifted. There was no legal basis for not allowing the current administration to go through with it. Now, the only thing is, there were other court decisions with other injunctions in other parts of the country, and they had made nationwide decisions. And so the Court of Appeals of the Ninth Circuit could not overturn those. So it's still blocked for the time being, but it may end up at the United States Supreme Court. And of course, since this is blatantly a political decision, has nothing to do with the law, as the quote-unquote indictment procedure on the other side of the medal is also completely a political decision, has nothing to do with the law either, the United States Supreme Court in all likelihood will uphold that new procedure. It's not just only that. There are so many procedures I don't think that you know and are aware of what is all being at this point implemented. America is going to become a fortress, a complete fortress. We're not just talking about a wall between, let's say, America and Mexico. We're talking about a wall all around us. As all the other power blocks are becoming fortresses, Europe is becoming a fortress, Russia is becoming a fortress, China is becoming a fortress. And of course, then you have maybe China and Russia going together, and other Far Eastern nations. And so these fortresses, these power blocks, will fight each other. We know that, don't we? After Germany and the nations under the German leadership will have destroyed the United States of America and Great Britain, then they themselves will be destroyed by the Russians and the Chinese. And then Christ will come back to make an end to this madness. Because if he wouldn't come back, no human being would be saved alive. Now, why do I say these things? What do they have to do with anything we are dealing with right now? I'm not saying because I'm telling you, oh, you should not have any more amusement, you should look at these things from morning to night. I mean, you would get crazy, if you were to do that. No, it's all right. It's all right to watch a movie. It's all right to do other sport activities or whatever you want to do. That's fine. But what I am saying, let's not keep the focus on what is really important, because these things are going to happen. They're going to happen, and they are developing with such a speed, which is amazing to me, that people are just so sound asleep and don't realize, and I'm even not excluding people in the church, don't realize how close we are to this terrible great tribulation which the Bible prophesies is going to happen in our time, in your time, in my time. We have people in the church, they may belong to the dinosaur age. Then you might have people, they belong to the Neanderthal age. And then you might have people who are living in modern times. I'm talking about age, right? Some are older, some are middle-aged like I am, and some are younger. But I would dare to say that all of us, there's perhaps a few exceptions, will experience the return of Jesus Christ while still alive. Which means we are not talking about 30, 40, 50 years from now. We are talking about a very short time. The time is short. And so we are being told that the day is at hand, and we should keep that in mind. We should keep in mind what terrible atrocities are going to happen. We must make sure we are not in any way associated with the politics in this country or in another country. It doesn't matter. Taking sides, saying, oh, we feel that this person should be in charge, even if we don't vote. But in our own minds, we take positions, not realizing it is all instigated for the biblical purpose of bringing about the Great Tribulation and, of course, the return of Jesus Christ. That and only that is the reason why we are having this update, where we're talking about what is happening and when it is happening and why it is happening very soon. And I hope everybody is awake enough to understand we are not dealing here with fairy tales. We're not dealing here with something which is far off in the future. We are dealing with something which might very well happen in a very, very few years from now. Let's make sure that we are not ending up in concentration camps. Let's make sure we are not ending up dead when that first nuclear bomb is thrown on this country. Let's make sure that we are going to be protected from God and by God, that we are worthy to be at the place of safety which God has provided for those who are not part of this administration, not part of this system, not part of the craziness of the legal and governmental and whatever system you might want to bring out. But we are different. We are strangers. We are foreigners in our lands. We don't have a homeland here. We are waiting for a better one. And we have left, and should have left it from a spiritual standpoint. And we shouldn't want to go back in our thoughts, in our actions, in our deeds, in our minds. That's what it's all about. And I hope this little speech today has reminded you of the fact what really is serious and what really is important in our lives and what is not.